one of the most successful groups using Food Hub to connect to their local producer cohort. There we go. So in the mind of a producer now, let's say that we're producing a product and we would like to find entities, wholesale buying entities in our region. This is an example of a buyer profile, and all the profiles look the same. Food Hub works very much like the Match.com of the local food system. Everybody's got a profile. It gives their contact information, website, name, email address. Up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see there's a button to just make contact directly. So Food Hub really cuts out, for a small producer, all the hours of time trying to figure out who's out there and who am I supposed to be contacting at these different entities. You can run a search on the products that you sell, get a list of buyers, and find their contact information directly, and that process is, boiled down to a few minutes, maybe an hour a week or something like that, prospecting on your computer, and then shooting off messages and instigating contact. Here's an example if I'm a buyer and I want to find blueberries in the region. I plug the word blueberries up in the search box, and it spits out, in this case, 69 members who are selling blueberries anywhere in this region, and orders them by proximity. So I'm seeing the ones that are closest to me all the way out to the ones that are furthest away. And as you can see, it includes both processor manufacturers, so distributors are definitely part of this picture, and the farmers as well. Finally, I'll just show you there's a marketplace function on Food Hub that operates very much like the Craigslist of local food. Any member can post either a product that they have a lot of and are trying to move quickly, or maybe if they're a livestock or rancher producer, they want to take advance orders for when they're doing harvest in the fall or something like that, or for buyers that want to announce to the community of local producers that they have a very particular need that isn't being filled. So posting on the marketplace is free. You can be very specific about exactly what it is you're looking for and what you need, and you will generate inquiries or replies to that post, either, again, directly through the system or via your own email. And I think that's that. And I'm happy to answer questions at the end about how it works or what the benefits are.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. So our next presenter is Sarai, which I'm going to unmute her here. Oh. Sarai, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Great. All right, I'll just do a quick introduction. So Sprout, the regional food hub, is housed in a former church in the heart of downtown Springfield, Oregon, and the unique architecture of the space and the energy of the activities at Sprout have brought new life to the area and are working to solidify the community food system in Lane County. Sprout houses a year-round farmers market, a 3,000 square foot commercial kitchen, and comprehensive food business development services, including technical assistance and access to capital. And our presenter today is Sarai Johnson, who's the assistant director at Nedco, where she has lovingly toiled for nearly 7 years. Her background is in small business management, particularly in the food industry and in nonprofit management. She earned a Master of Public Administration and Graduate Certificate in Nonprofit Management from the University of Oregon in 2012. Her hobbies include developing awesome programs at Nedco. Yes, she admits it's a job, but it's too fun to just think of it as work. And playing trains with her 2 little boys, her husband, and her dog, who really can't play trains, but she tries anyway. So with that, we'll let Sarai take over.
Well, thank you, Spencer, for that very verbose introduction, which I totally wrote. I always get carried away with my bio, so if that's a hint into how I'm going to present this, just prepare yourselves. So Sprout is actually a program of Nedco, as you might have guessed, since that's where I work. Nedco is Neighborhood Economic Development Corporation, and we have been around in Lane County, Oregon since 1979. So this is our 35th year. We've done a variety of community economic development programs over the years and have really worked hard on creating a set of services that help people and communities build assets. Our mission is all about building assets, and that's done on the individual level. So we help people primarily who are low income, but generally people of any income level to build personal assets so that they can attain financial stability, and we also provide community assets like Sprout so that we can help to create stronger and more resilient communities. So our approach is really from the ground up. We are a community development corporation, and we basically provide what I like to call on-ramps into mainstream systems. So we do that in the community food system as well as in financial systems and employment and in small business development as well as home ownership and some things like that. So we have kind of a wide variety of things. The way that Sprout fits into our mission is that we provide equitable access to fresh local food. We also provide economic opportunities for farmers and vendors, and then we contribute to downtown revitalization and really ultimately the entire economy of our region, especially in the county. So I was talking a second ago about creating on-ramps into mainstream systems, and really kind of like Amanda was saying, our food hub lies a little bit outside of the USDA's formal definition of a food hub because we actually don't have distribution at a larger level than just direct to the consumer. So we actually focus a lot on retail, and we also focus on incubation. So our real work at Sprout is partly in interfacing with the consumer and kind of providing a portal into the local food economy, as well as providing supports and acceleration incubation for food businesses in the economy so that they can diversify and to kind of give a stepping stone into the food industry, which is a really major player in our economy in Lane County. So if you want to go to the next slide, we'll talk about our year-round farmers market. Our year-round market started in October of 2012. We've been operating what used to be called Springfield Farmers Market and is now called Marketplace at Sprout since 2008. So we're entering into our 7th season. This has been a market that was initiated by the city as well as some nonprofit partners, and then NEDCO was brought in to help manage it. And originally it was really largely about downtown revitalization. But over time we really built relationships with our consumers and with our vendors, with other players in the community, and found that there was a lot of demand for year-round farmers market in the area. There wasn't one that was available. And so the year-round farmers market at Sprout operates every week except for, I think, usually right after whatever holidays are happening in the winter. We had a couple snow days this year, which was odd, but we operate all year round. And some of the things that have gone into that play into what Spencer was talking about as well at the beginning around balancing supply and demand. One of the big challenges we had in creating a year-round farmers market was increasing production of local food in the area that would be available direct to consumers. While our area is really a fertile place and you can grow things year-round without too much trouble and too much adaptation or specialized equipment, many farmers weren't doing year-round production because they didn't have a direct sales outlet. So again, kind of looking at where we're at, we're almost like pre-ag in the middle, pre-mid-tier value chain. We're really helping people to get into that level of work. So we're really working with small farms and usually, maybe some mid-sized type farms, but people who are really just starting out in the marketplace is really kind of what we specialize in. The other challenge that we have is in price sensitivity. As I mentioned earlier, NEDCO primarily works with low-income people, and our mission is all about asset building. And one of our big pieces, of course, is that equitable access to fresh local food. And so in our year-round farmers market, we've had to be creative in some of the ways that Spencer was also mentioning in the Community Food Systems Development Program at Oregon Food Bank, is that we've really worked hard to make sure that we can take all kinds of different forms of payment. We have EBT, SNAP availability, we do a SNAP match program, and we also have, of course, participated in the WIC and senior farm direct nutrition programs and everything else that we possibly can to make it easy for people of all incomes to shop at the market. And then let's go to the next piece. We also, of course, have our kitchen, which is kind of the crowning glory of our facility. It is an old church, and it is huge and awesome. The reason why we built this kitchen is because we found that around 2010, a lot of people in our area had been unemployed for an extended period of time. And when that happens, a lot of times entrepreneurship ticks up. And in our area, the food industry is pretty big. So we saw a lot of people really interested in getting into the food business. And we also saw a lot of farmers who are already participating in our farmers market who were needing a value-added production facility so that they could diversify their product lines and increase their opportunities to build their business and build their income. So we developed this kitchen so that we can do value-added production, and we use it for that purpose now. And we run it like a lot of kitchen incubators across the country. We've been doing that on an hourly basis. But also kind of speaking to Amanda's comment earlier about the loose usage of the word expert, we have definitely been iterating our way to success and iterating our way to something that works. And so we're actually tweaking our kitchen model all the time and have recently gone to using a model that is based on monthly packages that provide access to our business development services just as a matter of course, because that was actually not the case before. And most kitchen incubators around the country have worked on an hourly basis primarily, as well as like small add-ons for storage expenses and so forth. So it's all kind of an ad hoc thing. We're really finding our clientele have a hard time maximizing their use of the kitchen when they can't plan for it. So that's something that we've adapted and changed to meet their needs. The next slide will talk a little bit about our restaurant incubator. And this is a new program that we're doing as well. Our kitchen is really unique in that it has a pretty open floor plan concept. We use it as a place for farmers market vendors to vend during the year-round farmers market. And we also can use it ongoing every day of the week to have a restaurant incubator. So we're really excited. We actually had a great article in today's local paper about our very first restaurant incubator participant, which is called the 100 Mile Bakery. And that's not only a great thing that we're able to have a restaurant who's participating in our incubation program at Sprout, but also she is a very dedicated local sourcing bakery. So the 100 Mile Bakery is actually true to its name. She's able to source flour and most other ingredients that she uses from local producers or refiners and so forth. So that's a pretty great thing. Our restaurant incubator is going to fully launch this summer. So we actually are just doing a pilot of that right now. What we're really interested in is helping people to get on their feet and to learn how to manage and run a restaurant really effectively without having to invest as much as they would in upfront capital and overhead in their first year of operation. So what we're doing is helping them to get the hang of running a restaurant, understand the implications behind food costing and all of that, and then to start to practice that in our incubator. And they'll all participate in ongoing education and cohort style. And then the next thing that we've been able to do is, again, sort of differently from the aggregation and processing and distribution of fresh local food or any local food, we also provide events and hospitality in our space. We have this beautiful facility and we use it a lot for events for other nonprofits, especially for food industry nonprofits and other business entities. And the other cool thing about this is that it becomes a job creation engine for us. So one of our key activities in Sprout is creating business lines that are opportunities for employment for people who are at or below 125% of the federal poverty level. And we provide job supports and training as well as opportunities for employment. So events and hospitality is one of the ways that we do that through teaching people kitchen skills, knife skills, helping them to learn how to provide front of house services, learning how to do food production, and that is kind of the way that they get into that line of business and hopefully create a career ladder there. The next thing is a really exciting addition to our operation at Sprout is that we're on the verge of launching a local branded food product line. That will consist of a couple of different products, and one of them is going to be a kind of meal planned, locally sourced, mildly prepared, so basically chopped and kind of cleaned vegetables and other locally sourced items. We're lucky to have things like lentils and beans and flours located locally, so or grown locally, so we can provide those in our program. So that will be available on a subscription basis, and we'll also have meal kits that we're providing with fresh food, fresh local food in healthy corner store retailers, or generally corner store retailers who want to have more healthy products available, and especially those that are located in food deserts in our area. And so that will be something that we're launching this summer. And that's another way for us to maximize the use of that facility, and that will also be how we start getting into distribution. The next thing that we do, of course, is partner for aggregation and distribution. One of our major partners is a local organization called Willamette Farm and Food Coalition, and they're an awesome organization that does a lot of work with family farms, small farmers, and advocacy, connecting farmers to institutions and things like that. They have a program called Lane Local Foods that is a social enterprise that is a similar platform to Food Hub, kind of, although it's very locally based and it's really just direct to consumers primarily, although it can be used for restaurants and smaller buyers. So we provide our facility to them. They come in and they aggregate food that is provided by local growers, and then they distribute it out of our kitchen, again, direct to consumers, and hopefully eventually to a broader market. So as I mentioned, the next slide is about our incubation focus. We're really interested in helping small businesses to be successful, especially in the food industry, because that's an industry, as I mentioned, that's really strong in our area. So on the economic development side of things, really what we're doing is helping to create a stronger industry as well as individual businesses that have a lot more heft to them once they get started and launched. So we're doing that by working with individuals who are sole proprietors, working with businesses that are growing, helping them manage their employees, helping them manage their production, and providing this incubation space for them in order to get started the right way. A lot of course, food businesses fail in their first year of operation. What we're trying to do is not only prevent that high failure rate, but also produce small businesses that are ready to employ people in our community and to fill the vacant storefronts that are in our downtowns. The next slide kind of tells a little bit about the theory behind that, what we're actually doing. What we're really trying to ultimately get to is economic justice. And so I mentioned the on-ramps into the mainstream. What we're really trying to create is a way for people, regardless of where they start out, to create avenues for them to be successful in the economy and to be successful in their lives, however they want to self-determine those things. So economic justice is actually our ultimate goal. We do that through building individual assets first, helping individuals to really get that human and capital asset development work. We do the community assets like Sprout. We base that on market demand and respond to market demand and iterate based on market response. And then we make economic impact and report that economic impact, ultimately leading to creating a more equitable society and creating economic opportunity for people of all incomes. And then in closing, really that all rolls up to economic development. And in more specificity, it's community-based economic development that really takes the assets that exist in the community, the people here, their ideas, and builds on those things through things like Sprout, access to capital through match savings accounts, and our affiliate community development financial institution, community lending work. So we're able to provide access to capital to people in this work as well.
All right.
And that concludes the Sprout section of this. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Sarai. So our next presenter is Mitch Gruber, who is the Food Access Programs Manager at FoodLink, the regional food bank in Rochester, New York. And he manages the programs that let FoodLink shift their focus from food bank to food hub, including the urban farm stands, curbside markets, and the community store initiative. He is also completing a PhD in history with a focus on food systems from the University of Rochester. And in both program management and academic research, his work aims to show how to use existing infrastructure to create a more equitable food system. And I will... Sorry, Mitch, are you there? Okay, I'm going to quickly unmute folks to see if we can get Mitch.
I'm here.
Okay. Uh-oh. I'm sorry for the technical problems here. It looks like I'm going to have to unmute folks to allow Mitch to be able to speak. So if everyone could make sure that they are muted, that would be great.
Okay, so can everyone answer?
Sorry. One second, Mitch. I'm just gonna. Okay. Mitch, are you there?
I'm here.
All right. You can go for it, then.
Okay, I hear a bit of an echo. Is that the problem? All right. Well, I'm just going to go for it and deal with this slight echo. Spencer, if you need to stop me. Oh, I see Sharon's comment that there is an echo. So I don't know if that's something you want to try to take care of, or what do you want me to do?
Sure.
If everyone could just make sure that they're muted, that should help us get rid of the echo.
Great.
If you click on the microphone next to your name, you should be able to hear yourself. Okay.
Okay, well, peace out for this webinar.
Okay. Sound like everyone is muted.
I feel bad for him.
All right. Mitch, you want to try now?
Sure.
There we go. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I will try to be brief. My name is Mitch Gruber. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being here and listening, and for Spencer for inviting me. I actually had the pleasure of giving this presentation with Sharon Thornberry of the Oregon Food Bank out in Raleigh at the National Food Hub Conference just about a month ago now, maybe a little over. And I'm really just going to go through the same presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions. I'm going to skip through a lot of these slides pretty quickly because a lot of them get into a little more depth than I think we need to get into today. But Spencer, if we can start with our first slide, please. Just to give everyone a brief background on who we are and where we are, especially folks out in the West Coast. People don't think about New York State as an agricultural state, but in fact, upstate New York is one of the key agricultural sections of the land. If you look over where it says Wayne County, that's the second largest apple producing county in the country. Wyoming County is responsible for much of the Greek yogurt that you're seeing throughout all the shelves now in the grocery stores, so on and so forth. A lot of cabbage, onions, potatoes. We realized several years back that our biggest asset as a food bank is the local agriculture around us, that we needed to figure out how to work with that asset and that resource more than anything else, and that's really the trajectory we're going in. But really, we have these 10 counties. We have about 500 community partners within the 10 counties. I'm assuming, based on most people's participation in FEAST, that in fact they are somewhat familiar with food banks. So I'm not going to go into much of the details there. Next slide, please. So what's the catalyst for change? Number one, the recession that we all know about in 07, 08. What that really created was an increase in the need for our services. But at the same time, there was a decrease in donated product. A lot of the manufacturers and producers and even distributors that historically had donated to us were not necessarily in a position to be donating. And by the time we were able to figure out what's going on, we realized we had this increase in need, this decrease in donated product, and we needed to be more proactive about going and addressing that need. And a lot of what that meant was being more of a purchaser as a food bank than as a recipient and distributor of donated food. So that's really a lot of what this catalyst for change from food bank to food hub is. Next slide, please. So this graph here, very simple, very rudimentary, but it should kind of explain what I mean by food bank to food hub. And as you see at the top there, I just want to take an aside for a second. I put the words consumer driven there. And the reason for that is that the National Good Food Network, the folks that have worked with through the Wallace Center and worked with the USDA on developing a lot of the definitions for food hubs, really did so with the goal of figuring out how to help small to mid-sized producers access new markets. And that is an extremely important function of food hubs. It is really the function of food hubs, and that's what you've heard my two predecessors here talk about a lot. What we realized was there's also a need for a more consumer-driven food hub. So not necessarily focusing on the needs of the as producers, but focusing on the needs of the small, of small to mid-sized institutions and actually historically marginalized individual consumers to help them access the same foods that these small to mid-sized producers are growing. So if you look at this graph here, you see while the food bank focuses on this charitable model of donated, both receiving and shipping, the food hub is more about social enterprise. The food bank is passive. We can only go as far as our donations go, whereas the food hub is proactive. We get to figure out what is it that our constituents, our clients need, and how do we get it. And again, the food bank is responding to symptoms. It is hunger relief. It is not hunger prevention, and that's really what the food hub attempts to do. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go through each of these components very quickly. I'll spend about a minute on each slide. We can go to the next one to start. So the first point, the one I should have mentioned on that last slide, was that number one is acknowledging that traditional food banking does not end hunger. This is a huge component of what the philosophy behind our new model is. We recognize that we need to go, again, above and beyond looking at the symptoms and looking more at the causes. And one of the ways that we can do that is, in fact, with this slide, stewardship of assets. So as you heard from all the presenters thus far, there is a constant need in the world of food hubs for infrastructure. You look at any grant opportunities that any nascent food hub can apply for, and what you'll constantly see is people applying for coolers and freezers and trucks and warehouse space. Well, anyone who's ever been in a food bank before knows these are all things that food banks have. And what we're trying to figure out how to do most appropriately is how do we leverage our existing assets and resources, and some of them are listed right here. How do we leverage those to, again, be making more of an impact on the causes and not just the symptoms? So one thing that I would stress here is that for various food hubs around the country, rather than necessarily looking for new infrastructure to build, figuring out how to partner with existing food banks that have this existing infrastructure is a really critical strategy to consider. Next slide, please. So diversified customer base. We have a growing what we call a non-emergency base. I'm sure that every food bank has somewhat different terminology, but when we say non-emergency, we mean agencies beyond the food pantry, soup kitchen, homeless shelter. These are all agencies that do, in fact, purchase product. We're talking about daycares, group homes, senior centers. They all have budgets to purchase product. And historically, they've been going to shop retail. But if they want to be able to buy local, and they want to be able to buy the most nutritious, and they want to be able to stretch their food dollars, retail is not helping them do so. So one of the things that we're really doing with this food hub is figuring out okay, your organization runs 50 group homes. How are we going to work with your organization to forecast what it is that each of the group homes wants to buy? They all buy 20 pounds of apples a week, or roughly 20 pounds of apples. Okay, FoodLink will then go out to the apple farmers, we'll buy the apples, and we'll make sure that we can store them and sort them for each of those group homes. That's a major part of our diversified customer base. We also have programs like, if you see right there, that's our curbside market, that photograph in the slide. That's actually a mobile farmer's market. It's basically a grocery aisle on wheels that we bring directly into senior centers, public housing facilities, and places where we allow individual consumers to shop right through us. And we do take SNAP on there. We do take WIC, the $4 Farmers Market Nutrition Program checks. These are all ways that we're doing more individual service than we have done in the past. Next slide, please. So investing in the local economy, this one kind of goes without saying. As a food bank, we see ourselves as much more than just a hunger relief and hunger prevention organization. We're also big drivers of the local economy. And in the last year alone, we've spent over $250,000 on local agricultural product. We've moved about 3 million pounds of purchased agricultural product. This has a huge impact on the farmers around us, and it also has the benefit of when we purchase the product, and then we resell it in ways like this to the group homes and to senior centers. We can continue to cycle money through our program so that these are actually sustainable dollars that we're spending. Next slide, please. So market-based solutions, I'm not going to get into a ton of logistics with this slide, but one of the things we really mean, and the reason that I use this publication that I put in there that's published by the Wallace Center, is that we're really I'm starting to get an echo again. Okay. We're really interested in creating a value chain amongst our agencies and amongst the folks that we work with. So we understand that a lot of the agencies that work with food banks want donated food because there's no cost associated with it. But if we can begin to create a value chain and say, look, fresh tomatoes may cost some money, but they don't have to be what the retail cost is. We can figure out how to pass on wholesale prices, even prices on seconds, to various agencies and groups. We can begin to prove that, yes, there is a difference between the cost of a purchased tomato and a canned donated tomato, but the truth be told, there's a reason why one of them costs more money than the other. And when we build that value chain, we're going to really begin to help us get out of this charitable, exclusively charitable model of food banking. Next slide, please. And with this value chain, we can begin to address things like health over hunger. And this slide is really important. It goes right with our economic development slide because truly what we see as the benefits to any food bank being involved with moving purchased agricultural products is that we're both economic development drivers and public health drivers. We were part of a Center for Disease Control grant that really actually got us started in a lot of this this movement towards being more a food hub than exclusively a food bank. And one of the reasons for that is because when you buy food, and you can be a lot more proactive about getting what you want, and we can be more proactive as a food bank of figuring out how are we going to get what people need to make the nutritious meals. And then we, as you see in the slides here, we run a lot of nutrition education programming to make sure that we can show people, okay, not only can we get you tomatoes at a very affordable price that's local and nutritious, but in addition to that, we can also show you strategies for using those tomatoes, for maximizing their freshness, for maximizing their usage, that type of stuff. Next slide, please. So our food access programs are really the crux of a lot of this work. Last summer we ran 12 farm stands. These are essentially pop-up farm markets that we take purchased local product and set up at different community centers. and various host agencies. Last summer, we moved about 30,000 pounds of local product through these farm stands. We also did that curbside market for the first time, the vehicle I showed you before. This program had over 35, closer to 40,000 pounds of local produce, and we made $24,000 in sales in our first year. This is without doing a lot of advertising, a lot of promotion, because it all happened very quickly. But the point is that even in very low-income neighborhoods, there is money to be spent on fresh food. If we can figure out how to get healthy, affordable, and fresh food, and we can figure out how to take things like the EBT, like the WIC forms of payment, we can really begin to be a consumer-driven food hub. And finally, the Healthy Corner Store Initiative is our attempt at working right now with three different existing corner stores to help them transfer into more community stores and begin to include a lot of these purchased healthy products that I've been talking about up until now. Next slide, please. Finally, the next steps in the future is really, as you can see at the bottom there, are value-added processing. And I heard other folks talk about it already. But we know that there's a huge need, a huge demand for farm-to-school and farm-to-institution processing. And it could be anything from IQF, which is a lot more industrial and advanced, to even just the basic washing, slicing, and bagging apples. Those sliced apples you see on the bottom there, we're now in 50 different public school districts in our 10-county service area, bringing locally sliced apples directly into the schools. And the demand is even greater. So we're really looking forward to continuing to build that moving forward. And finally, the last slide is just some lessons for food banks and food hubs that I think are pretty important. And again, a lot of it is just rehashing what I've said before. A lot of it is what I want to impart here with is it's important for food banks to figure out how to leverage our assets. We already work. The second point is that we already work with low-income, underserved populations. We can do more than just getting dented cans and crushed boxes out to these agencies. We can figure out how to make good local food available to these large networks. And that piggybacks right into the last point, which is that charity alone is not going to end hunger. And that's really what this food hub notion means to us, is it's a lot more of a focus on purchased and largely fresh, healthy, affordable foods. The last slide is my contact information, and feel free to let me know if you have any questions other than what we can go through today. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Mitch. And it looks like now we're going to open up to question and answer. So if folks want to type in their questions, we already have a couple. The first one, actually, Mitch, if you're still there, if you just want to answer the first question is, are the FoodLink access programs, such as curbside and pop-up markets, seen as a social enterprise, as in their aim is to make profit, and do they self-sustain financially or require consistent external funding?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, we do consider them social enterprises. So I will focus on the two that were mentioned because the community store initiative, we're still in our very pilot phases, so I can't really forecast appropriately how that one's going to look long term. But our pop-up markets are all in fact self-sustaining. We essentially consider all of these host sites as agencies, just like any food bank considers to have non-emergency type of agencies. So we work with them to bring out this fresh local produce, and yes, we do mark up the prices. We pass on a wholesale price, but we mark up by 10, 15% to make sure that these things can be self-sustaining. It's the same thing with the curbside market. Last year was our first year. I've just recently finished crunching the numbers, and we were really close to being completely break even. We were, candidly speaking, we were a little bit off because of staffing. That's obviously a big additional component with the curbside market. We have to hire a driver and an operator. So I think the key to making that one more self-sustaining is actually increasing the markups a slight amount on those. And these are all things that we're in the process of tweaking now. But the goal is, in fact, to make them self-sustaining. We're not going to go out and look for grants for these every year. If we have to do that, then I'm not sure what the point of trying to run them is right now.
Great, thank you, Mitch. So the next question is kind of for all presenters, but maybe we'll ask Sarai to answer this because there is a specific question for her. But the question is, have presenters done any monitoring or data collection with the aim of evaluating their success? And then specifically for Sarai, are health outcomes a consideration in your work at all? And
Yeah, that's a great question. We do a lot of course, the economic impact assessment. We actually use a program called the Sticky Economic Evaluation Device that's put out by Market Umbrella. It's online and a really, really great way to do some assessment of the impact of local farmers markets. So we do that. We've also done periodic kind of health behavior change assessments, so seeing whether people are increasing their intake of fruit and vegetables and things like that because of the market. So we haven't done anything more in depth than that, but we would love to do that in the future, and we actually have just recently invested in a program evaluation staff person, so that's going to be something that we'll be able to undertake in the future.
Great, and it looks like there's another evaluation question, so while we're on that topic, we'll move to Amanda. And has there been any evaluation or impact assessment on food-hub.org, and if so, what were the results?
Yeah, we do an annual member survey to get feedback directly from the participants about what sort of successes or results they're finding by virtue of using the site. And we found consistently that every year the members report that they have, and I'm not going to remember the exact number off the top of my head from the most recent survey, but they've consistently reported that they've made new connections. So in other words, they've connected with buyers or they've connected with sellers that they would have never encountered before by virtue of using the site, which of course is its primary focus. So we were glad to see those results. It's much harder to calculate the economic activities, so the number of sales made as a result or the total dollar value generated from connections made on Food Hub. But we do have, it looks from the producer side that somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20% of them have specifically tracked sales back to connections made on Food Hub. And of those, the dollar value of those sales ranges from just a few $100s for the smaller producers to about $50,000 for bigger producers. And interestingly, we dug into some of those sales to get a little more information about some of those bigger dollar values, and those were, in some cases, peer-to-peer transactions where one farmer was selling product to another farmer who was aggregating on behalf of a much bigger buyer. So the one thing that is challenging with the Food Hub platform is, and this was part of the nonprofit mission of facilitating the connections in whatever way possible, we put the contact information, the phone number, the email address, the website, everything is available on people's profiles. And especially in this community of users where farmers tend to be in fields and chefs tend to be in kitchens and neither tends to sit in front of a computer, very often those transactions are actually happening and getting consummated over the phone, if not at least through personal email. So the tracking on that stuff is a little bit tricky, but we have gone through every year and taken a self-reported sort of measurement through surveying.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. And there's one quick question that I think that I can answer, which is that, do you know of any food banks or hubs that are actually growing food rather than aggregating it? As far as for food banks, there are a few here in Oregon that are growing some of their own food. I don't know if anyone has any other comments about other food hubs growing their own, or if you know of any.
Yeah, I mean, this is Mitch. So there's plenty of food hubs out there that own and operate their own farms. Certainly there's plenty of resources out there to figure out where these places are. I know one classic example is the local food hub. That's its name in Charlottesville, Virginia. For a long time was operating a farm. I actually think, I'm not entirely sure if that's still going on or not, but and then places like FoodLink, for example, we used to own and operate a farm and decided that it wasn't necessarily the best use of our time and resources, especially being such an agriculturally rich part of the country. There wasn't necessarily a need for us to grow on our own. But we do operate a lot of different community gardens and urban agricultural products, and a lot of stuff that's grown there cycles through other programs. So, the answer is that a lot of folks are doing a lot of their own growing. Is it always necessary, or is it more an educational tool? That certainly changes from site to site.
Great. And another quick question, are the slides going to be available after the webinar? Yes, they will be on Oregon Food Bank's website, and I will send out a link to that in the chat and also to all of the people that provided emails for us. So the next question, which I think is open to any of the presenters, is just generally around funding. And there was a specific question about funding for networking and outreach. So if anyone wants to tackle the funding question about getting food hubs funded.
I don't know the exact details, but my understanding is that there's a lot more funding being made available in the new Farm Bill for specialty crop and for beginner farmer rancher and a whole bunch of programs related that could be made applicable, I think, to developing new food hubs. So I'm certainly no authority, but I think that there is actually more money available than there has been. Food hubs are of keen interest, certainly to the USDA and to the whole community of practice.
This is Sarai. I think I could also speak to kind of trying to get a capital campaign off the ground as well. We, just depending on what your actual existing infrastructure is, of course we purchased a church and we did it all, and we bought that with some city pass-through funds from the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, which is a great resource for this kind of work, especially if it's alleviating slum blight or benefiting low-income beneficiaries. So that's important to know. And then another really great resource for programs that have a business model that will generate revenue and or eventually would become profitable is to consider a program-related investment in addition to grants and other sources. Program-related investments, if you're not familiar with them, are essentially a very low-interest loan product that you can get as a nonprofit to invest in your programs.
Great. Thank you. The next question is for Mitch, I believe. Did you use registered dietitians to do your nutrition education? And how did you enlist them, and when did they do their education presentations?
Yeah, we have. So I guess every food bank and every food bank is certainly different in this regard too. But we have a pretty robust nutrition education team here at FoodLink. We have one RD and two MPHs that head it up, and quite a bit of staff in terms of AmeriCorps Vista and sources like that. I would say that off the top of my head, I doubt that most for-profit food hubs have a very large nutrition ed component to what they do. But for us, a lot of what our nutrition ed does historically is things like Cooking Matters and Just Say Yes to Fruits and Vegetables. These are national or at least regional curricula. In terms of what they do with the programs that I mentioned, all of the farm stands have at least one cooking demonstration. All of the curbside market sites have at least one cooking demonstration, and all of them have recipe cards and different types of nutritional fact cards, essentially, that we try to make available to everyone as often as possible.
Great. Thank you, Mitch. And it looks like Sharon has added that the Farmers Market Promotion Program funds are being expanded to Farmers Market and local foods promotional programs, and that rules, this is about funding, and rules for all the new funding will roll out over the summer. And I had a question for Amanda, or more of a, to see if she could just explain something that Food Hub is looking at doing in rolling out their model to a more local and smaller regional focus, which is called SubHubs. So I was wondering if Amanda could explain a little bit about that project.
Sure. So one of the things that we've learned over the last couple of years of trying to build the membership of Food Hub and explore what its best use is that it actually is a great tool for folks like us that are working out in communities, and even more so the ones that are on the ground in focused on a very specific region or hyper-local area, to facilitate connections between their buyers and sellers. But of course, if they define the region too small, then there aren't enough of them to really get a robust local food system really thriving. So one of the ways that we hope to deploy Food Hub essentially to help facilitate success in those very local markets is to take the name off of it, essentially, to take the Food Hub logo off the front, let the local food advocacy organization or community food system organizer in any given region brand it as their own, and have, promote the tool as a platform for facilitating connections within their immediate region. But then everybody who joins is also has access to the whole universe of members in Food Hub. So it's essentially a branded doorway that folks can walk through that ties directly to the community food system organizer in their locality. So they can use it to make connections directly within their immediate region, but then they also have access to the whole universe, so they can also make connections. So for example, in Oregon, we've got lots of fairly remote, far-flung, smaller towns where community organizers want to facilitate connections directly within those communities, but producers may also want to have access to markets in Eugene or Bend or Pendleton or Portland, where there may be some bigger buyers, so they can also have, find connections in those broadly within the region as well. So if there are community organizers or local food advocacy organizations that are interested in having a branded version of Food Hub, you can just email me or get in touch through Spencer or Sharon here at OFB, and we can help get you set up.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. Here's a question that just came in. Can anyone speak to their opinion of the role of OGC, Organically Grown Companies' Ladybug program in the Portland area food system and the impacts on producers, buyers, and consumers? I guess I'll look at Amanda as the only Portland-based person here.
Yeah, OGC, which is Organically Grown Company, major organic produce distributor up the West Coast, sort of from the Oregon border north, has been a really great supporter of all things related to building the regional food system. They're a supporter of Organic Ecology Conference and support lots of community food system work in lots of different ways. Their Ladybug program, I believe, and I hesitate a little bit to speak on behalf of OGC because I'm no expert there either, but from what I understand, the Ladybug program is their co-op of producers in the region, and is really the heart of, and certainly the origin of where OGC developed. So I think the opportunity, Ladybug is a really well-developed, long-standing brand now that feeds into to OGC's very robust distribution network. And those relationships have been in place for a long time. Those farms tend to be on the bigger side, sort of the jumbo shrimp of ag of the middle sort of space. And I think that there's probably opportunity for new or smaller farms to understand what the requirements are of participating in OGC's distribution network and getting the proper certifications and liability insurance and post-harvest handling procedures and all that sort of stuff in place. Because demand for organics, as we, I think, touched on earlier, is only growing. So I think the requirements are fairly stringent, but it's well worth considering for smaller players.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. The next question is for Sarai. How did or does Sprout go about engaging community members in their incubator opportunities, and who is the target market?
I'm so glad you asked. Well, we actually have two different target markets. So we have the micro enterprise target market, which is a small business which has 5 or fewer employees and costs less than $35,000 to start up. And in that marketplace, we have a program called Activator, Hatch Activator program, and that's really around helping people do feasibility and figure out whether business is right for them. And then the next step is the Incubator program, which is much more intensive and requires kind of a greater level of commitment and also a level of readiness. One of the things we do before people can do the Incubator program is we really want to make sure that they're financially solvent enough to invest in their business in the way that they're going to have to in order to successfully get through our Incubator program. And so we do some of that on the front end. We also help them find access to smaller capital in order to start to build the business up that way. And in answer to the question about actually how we engage them, we do a number of different things. We're very present in the community as far as kind of tabling and outreach in public venues and public events and things like that, but we also have a lot of really deep, long-standing partnerships with public service agencies or social service agencies. And so we do get a lot of referrals from them. We get referrals from the local unemployment office. In Oregon, we have the self-employment assistance program in our unemployment program, so that's a really great avenue. And we also get a lot of referrals from the Small Business Development Center in our area and other people who know that we specialize in microenterprise and especially in the food business work.
Great. Thank you, Sarai. So it looks like that is the end of the questions from audience members, and I just had one last question for Mitch. How have donors responded to the food bank switch to the Food Hub model?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So first of all, I do want to reiterate, it's not as though we're not a food bank still. I mean, we are part of the Feeding America network. We will continue to be for a long time, and hunger relief is still the vast majority of the work that we do. Last year we distributed about 18 million pounds. Certainly well more than half of that comes from traditional food banking sources and is really traditional food banking. So it's not as though our donors, it's not as though we presented this to our donors saying we're doing this now and we're not doing what we've always done in the past. Well, like I said in the presentation, what we're really trying to do more than anything is leverage the existing assets and resources that we have to be a little bit more proactive, to start a bunch of these programs that can get a little bit deeper into the causes and rather than just the symptoms. So thus far, talking about the message in that way, we haven't had a problem with donors. We haven't had a problem with other Feeding America networks, other Feeding America food banks before. Everyone understands what we're doing and why, and a lot of that is because we still have a foot in the world in the door of both worlds, I suppose.
Great. Thank you, Mitch. And so it looks like those are all the questions we have for today, and we're ending pretty much right on time. So I just wanted again to thank all of our presenters, Amanda, Sarai, and Mitch, for taking the time to speak with us today about their projects. And just to reiterate, for those that are interested in the slides, we'll be posting them on our website probably in the next day or so, OregonFoodBank.org, and under our webinars and trainings page. So thanks again, everyone, for attending. And our next webinar will be on July 7th. And we'll be sending out emails to our Feast Leadership Network about that. It'll be on farmer networks, and we're going to have a presenter from Oregon State University Extension talking about starting farmers markets. And so if you are on the Feast Leadership Network list, you'll get an email about that. If you are not, just send me an email at smasterson@OregonFoodBank.org, and I can add you to the list. All right, thanks everyone, and we'll talk to you again later.